Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writers Round podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts,
Holly Rebelliard.
Austin Matthews.
and Bob Dodo. And today we're going to be talking about what motivates you as a writer. Yay! Let's get motivated together.
Let's get motivated.
We need some music, what would be some good. All right, here we go. Let's just jump into it. What motivates you? Is there music involved, or you need a candle, or you want money? I don't know. Let's start the discussion.
I would say something that motivates me, and I'm going to start on a very surface level here, and then I'm going to say something outrageous by the end of this podcast. Is going to probably going to have people calling to check in on me. But I love listening to music when I'm writing, and I don't do it all the time, but I have like a crazy assortment of different playlists that I listen to. So as you know, I have my like crazy, like badass assassin playlist that I listen to when I'm at the gym. And I also use that when I'm writing my fight scenes and stuff like that. But I also listen to a lot of like heavy classical, or the other day I had a playlist called Classical Bangers that I was listening to. And it just like, depending on what kind of scene I'm writing, it just really gets my heart rate going, and it gets me like completely absorbed into what I'm doing. Like, I just feel so much more intense, and I feel like I write better. And then it's funny because then when I hear this kind of music, when I'm not writing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go write, because I can hear this music in the back of my brain, and it's making me think of all these scenes that I should be writing right now. So that is kind of surface level. That's what motivates me to write. What about you guys?
I'm going to jump off that because I like when we're talking about like motivates me to like get into the writing process for the day. Music is such a fantastic tool. So like I like to pick a specific artist for each of my each of my perspective characters. So like the Kindle Vela I'm doing, I have everything from Doja Cat is one of the MC's things, and then I've got a perspective character that's Bad Bunny, is all of his music. And so just having that, it really helps with the character voice of like I'll be typing something, I'm like, no, that's not what, that's not Bad Bunny's vibe. Like, let's move back into that. So it really helps with keeping a consistent character voice for me.
So you can listen to music that has lyrics to it and write.
Yeah.
Wow. I could not listen to music with words in it and write.
Nope.
I can barely talk and listen to music some days, honestly.
Yeah. So like it depends on the music. Like if one of the nice things is that if you pick a specific artist, they tend to be very, very similar songs. Like if you pick the Imagine Dragons, every song sounds the exact same. Sorry for Imagine Dragon fans, but it's true. But like you get into that, and it's like there's some variety in that, just like there is in a human personality. But you can kind of just drown out the actual words after a certain point. But like that in that same story, it's like I have 3 Days Grace in there, and it's like they might be screaming like let's start a riot, but like at a certain point you just get into the like, okay, like it's that tone and that beat and everything. So but I will say on like normal, like I'm just narrating, it is really hard. So then I just go for like chill vibes music. I actually just subscribed to a chill vibes channel today, and I was like, never thought I would be that guy, but I am.
Oh no, that's mostly what I listen to. I swear to God, I mostly listen to chill vibes. You know what gets me when I sit down and I know what the scene is going to be at, where it's at, and what it's going to be about. I have to go watch a scene from a movie that matches that emotional connection. So if it's something tense and something a little scary, I know I have watched. There's a scene in the movie Zodiac where one of the characters meets with a different character, and he's talking about the poster and that they found this handwriting on, then this guy finds out, like, the guy he's talking. I know this sounds like nobody knows what I'm talking about. Anyways, like it's so scary, intense for the main character in there, because he was not. He just took like this horrible left turn into like, hey, help me find this murderer guy. Here's his handwriting. And the guy he's talking to says, that's my handwriting. What are you talking about? And then he's like, hey, let's go down to this basement that I have here. The whole scene is like, it's about 5 or 6 minutes long, and it is so intense. Like, oh my God, it's so scary. Anyway, if I'm looking for a tense, scary scene, then I will rewatch that. I'll rewatch it like 2, 3 times just to kind of get the feel, the vibe for it. And then that's when I go look for a themed soundtrack. So something that with that, something scary, intense, I'm going to listen to the Joker soundtrack or the newest Batman soundtrack is very dark and very tense like that. So it's got a lot of really good stuff in it. So that's what I do. I go look for video to watch a couple of times. You can get me in the mood, and then I go look for the music, and then I'm ready to write.
That's really interesting because I feel like with music, like there's definitely been times where I've been listening to music and it's just like I'm just, even if it's like really dark and depressing music for one of my dark and depressing scenes, it doesn't put me in that mood, right? Like if you're super happy and you're having like a great day and then you have to sit down and write like a dark and dreary scene, music doesn't necessarily always do that for you. But once you like physically or like you're watching a show or a movie or whatever that has that scene in it and you're like experiencing it, then it like really gets you in the scene. That's actually a really interesting point. I have never tried that, but
yeah, try it. And it's the same just for exciting scenes. I write a lot of action, so I'm off to look at some Mission Impossible movies. Not the whole movie, just the scenes. Just like I said, I just want some action. I want to get in the character's shoes, I guess it is, visually. So
yeah. I will say, Bob, I'm going to need some recommendations on some good detective / police work stuff. So I'm working on a murder mystery series, but like what made me think of it is my theme music for that is based off of Seatbelts, the band. They do the theme music or the theme song for Cowboy Bebop. If you've ever heard it, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, those are classic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's fantastically in the era too. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say go with 7. Ever seen the movie 7? Yeah. Or maybe check out the music from that. But yeah, that's a really good one. Again, Batman. I'm a huge Batman fan. So Batman was kind of based off of that movie 7. They definitely had a lot of similar things going on. But yeah, so that'd be fun. Yeah, it just kind of depends. Like we're talking about the character. Sometimes a character comes in and he's all, heroic or something. So you want to go look for something like that. But so that's something I could do.
I also feel like I know we talked about this on one of our writer's block episodes, but for me as well, if I am not really in the mood to write, I'll just go take the dogs out for a walk around the neighborhood or something like that, or just go explore somewhere. Because I will every single time, maybe it's just this crazy neighborhood that I live in, but every single time I'm out there, I will see something that I'm just like, oh, I just want to write about that. Or it makes me think of something that I want to write about. And even if it's not for my specific book that I'm working on at the time, it still gets me writing. And then from that, I immediately want to go and write on work on other stuff.
Yeah. And like, there's so many things that make me just want to write things. So like I was telling Bob before we started, I was looking up a character name for a story I'm working on. And that made me like run into this story about King Darius the Great. And I was like, this is the most buck wild piece of history I've ever heard. And I'm like, I don't even know that you want to set it in like a fantastical world. It's already crazy enough on its own. I just want this to be the story that I'm either writing or reading or whatever.
Right.
So it could be something as like packaged as that, or like I misread the title of somebody else's book earlier today where it was Heir on Fire or something, like heir to the throne. And I read it as Heir for Hire. And I was like,
Heir for Hire. I like it.
I like that. I like that's intriguing.
Yeah, so I'm like immediately interested, and then I see what it is. I'm like, oh, Heir on Fire. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm slightly intrigued by that, but less intrigued than Heir for Hire.
The other one is so much better. How about dreams? You guys ever have dreams? You're like, okay, let me write that down. I'm not gonna write a book about this.
Dreams, that's a good one. So I don't know if this is actually true. I have no idea if there's any research behind this, but I've heard that a lot of the time you dream and then you forget it, right? You wake up and you forget it. So if you like repeat to yourself over and over, I'm going to wake up after every dream. I'm going to wake up after every dream. Then you will wake up, like consciously wake yourself up after every dream, and then you can write it in your journal. I've never tried that because the idea of waking up that many times in the middle of the night, I would become the most angry person.
Right.
I was gonna say that
I
sounds
wouldn't get any writing done
exhausting.
because I would just be exhausted and
Yeah.
so crabby.
Not to mention
But
your
yeah.
partner is super annoyed, you know?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, oh my God, are you writing again? Stop it. Like,
What are you, a writer or something?
yeah, dreams are a really good one. I think there's probably been like a time or two. I don't know if you guys remember me talking about it, but I had done like a short story, like a horror, and that was kind of based off of like it wasn't really a dream that I had, but I felt like someone had like touched my hair when I was sleeping or something like that. And it freaked me out. And then amongst all these other crazy things that were happening in this house I was living in at the time.
Ooh.
So, you know, like that's how
wanna
I
hear
got the
about
idea
that.
for the story though, is because I was
Ooh.
like freaked out by
Right.
this dream.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last Halloween. So,
Yeah, I
'cause,
think
we were
that was
talking
our
about things
Halloween
that freaked
episode.
us out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those fun stories because truth is always stranger than
Mhm.
fiction, you know? And we could think of something, but like when you know, I've had wacky stuff happen in this house that doesn't happen anymore. But, you know, somebody walking down the hallway at the same time, somebody was downstairs. My brother in law was downstairs watching somebody walking down the hall. And he just said it was like this silhouette. And he was like, what the heck is that? But anyway, stuff like that is just, yeah, like, holy cow, what's like, it's just, I don't know, fun. But yeah, dreams. I had a dream about, it looked like it was a daughter and a dad in like kind of a rundown place, and they're like digging for stuff, kind of like a trash heap, looking for stuff. So they get their stuff, and then they're going back in their truck to this town that has like gates, and then like I'm slowly realizing this is like an apocalyptic future where there's like it's a wasteland now.
Oh.
And people were out there, like, you know, dad was like driving fast and the truck's giving him trouble, and then they finally get in there, and there's a sign when the gates close, there's a sign on the outside that said welcome to Dumptown. So I wrote that down on like what you're talking about, sticky note. I like jumped over here to my office and I wrote that down, so it's still here. That was like a year ago. But like I still remember it. It was so cool. But I was like, I want to know what the heck this is.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to write based off of my dreams. I don't have dreams very often, but when I do, they are not
Just
pleasant.
wild.
Like I usually also have recurring nightmares, so they're not just nightmares, they're like nightmares I've had since I was a kid. So like one of them, I'm like traveling and we get lost up in the mountains, and like it's storming, and we end up like stopping at this hotel like on a cliff face, and like you walk inside, it's all knick-knacky, like the inside of like a Cracker Barrel or whatever, and it's kind of fun and cozy or whatever, but like we don't really look around, it's late, we just want to go to bed. Wake up in the middle of the night, start exploring, and realize like all the knick-knacks are like jars with body parts and stuff
Oh my
in them.
gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I don't even know why you're not writing that.
That's terrifying. Ugh.
Yeah, and it only gets worse from there. So.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like
Bestseller.
my dreams are definitely not like exciting enough to write about, I feel like. And when I do have them, I'm always like escaping from something, but I can never really see it. And for some reason, I always run in circles because my legs, you know, just turn into like mush blobs. And it's like, you know, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's not worth writing about, that's for sure.
I
I
always
don't even
die in
think
my
I can make a
dreams.
story out of that.
Yeah. I always die in my dreams, so maybe that's why I always kill my characters off.
It all makes sense now. Austin has dream trauma. That's why he kills off all his characters.
I take it out on them.
So, Holly, you work with horses. You don't dream about horses?
You know, I do actually dream about horses sometimes. I have one horse. I call him my heart horse. I got this horse as a 2-year-old, and I had him for years and years and years. Then I ended up selling him so I could go back to university because I was never going to get a job doing anything unless I did. So I was like, okay. So I went back. I sold him. I sold him to an amazing home, which I still love. Ironically, this is going to be my tangent story for the day, but the lady who bought him for me, she actually went on, she sold him to another person. And then the horse actually passed away this past year, which was really
Oh.
sad.
Mm.
But the lady who bought him from me, she loved him, and she wrote a book that is published, and he is on the cover of the book.
Wow.
And I think that to me as a writer, I'm like, this is just
Yeah.
everything that I love all in one place.
Oh my
So
gosh.
cool. I'm like, why didn't I do that? I mean, my life is not exciting enough to write a memoir yet.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But yeah, so every once in a while I'll dream about him and just like imagine that
Aw.
he's like still alive and we're competing.
Oh,
And
that's sweet.
yeah, it's super fun. Sometimes I have like dream trauma where I'm like trying to jump him and he just doesn't want to jump over something, or like losing a competition, which to me is like another form of a nightmare.
Mm,
But sometimes I dream about horses.
yeah. Oh, that's neat.
Mhm.
You know what? I used to be a cop. I retired 4 years ago, and guess what I dream about? That's right. 4 or 5 days a week, I dream about being at work, and it drives me up the wall.
Oh.
And it's always, every single dream is always about me returning to work. And I'm telling everybody there, I knew I had to come back. I knew I had to come back. And everyone's like, cool. Nothing bad. There's nothing bad's going on. It's all new people. I don't know any of these people that I work in the dream. And but it's just so annoying because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I knew I had to come back. It's awful. It's like,
Do you think that's your dream, like your body's subconscious way of telling you to come out of retirement?
Yeah, probably. My bank account
Or-
sure is.
You're suppressing.
Yeah, it reminds me of those
Yeah.
dreams where you like
Uh-huh.
you get up and you get ready in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah.
And then that's when you wake up and you're like, I don't have it in me to get ready
Oh.
again.
I know this is not the dream podcast, but since we're on the topic, please tell me I'm not the only one that all of a sudden in the dream discovers that you were not having. Yeah, there's no pants, and I'm like, I'm in a mall or an office, and I'm like, all right, just keep walking. No one's gonna notice.
I've never actually had, like, I know that's supposed to be a really common dream, but I've never had that dream. And
Oh,
I
you're
always
so
wonder if that
lucky.
was weird. Okay, but if you want, I'll have a confession. I dream in black and white, which is
Oh,
apparently-
that is
Dream in black and
interesting.
white?
yeah,
Really?
apparently it's an old person thing.
Oh, it's
So
because you're an
there's
old
like a-
soul.
Yeah.
Well, there's a correlation with if you grew up with a black and white television, you're more likely to dream in black and white.
I grew up
so-
with a black and white television.
You're the youngest one out of all of us.
I
There's
know.
no way that there's no way that you dream black and white because you had a black and white TV. And you don't.
I didn't say that was why I did it. I said there was a correlation,
That's funny.
madam, who works in
Madam.
science.
Scientists with color monitors.
Oh, right.
Come
New
at me with
technology.
correlation versus causation stuff.
Oh gosh.
Oh, here we go. The brainiacs are at it.
Oh, speaking of which, I
Anyways.
just finished my master's.
Hey, congratulations!
Congratulations, Austin. That's so exciting.
Assuming I actually passed.
Yes.
my class.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's first.
The grades have not come out yet, but
Yeah.
fingers
Right
crossed.
on, man. Congratulations.
So,
That's
so now I can focus on writing.
Yay! Get back to writing. What a
Hey,
great
on the bright
team.
side, if you got an F, you won't see it in red, apparently.
Oh, Holly! Wow,
Oh man,
that was a burn. Holy mackerel! That was flammable.
don't even. That also gives me like the whole thing about being a teacher. You're not supposed to use red pens anymore. So,
Oh, really?
Somebody
yeah,
told me
man.
that once, and I think about that when I write, actually. Someone told me, I had a boss once when I worked at an ice cream store, and she said that we weren't allowed to have any red pens because red was negative in
Aggressive.
business.
Oh, wow.
And because it was
And
like,
it hurts
Yeah.
feelings.
I guess so.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah.
it hurts my feelings when I see it over all of the friggin' through entire chapters in my
Yeah.
writing.
Right.
Well, you know what? It stands out, so I'm gonna keep using red.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
That's okay. All right. We talked about dreams. Talked about black and white.
So what motivates us?
What motivates? How about money? Anyone here for money? Like thinking I'm gonna be rich.
I think
don't
we
think
talked about it
so.
last time. That
Yeah,
I
you
am
kinda
the
did.
worst.
Yeah, you don't care if you can make 2 pennies to rub together.
I was
Mhm.
thinking about that today, actually, because I was thinking about all the querying and stuff like that I've been doing. Not all of it. I did it. I've only sent out like 20. I started thinking about it, and I was like, I mean, my writing doesn't really affect my day job. And as much as I love writing, and I really love writing, and I would really love to do it full time. But not becoming like a really highly paid, successful author, to me, I just feel entirely comfortable with that. Because I mean, I'm happy knowing that I've written these books. I love these books. And some people will read them. And it's really fun for me. I've really built this great community around me, like you guys, our writing group, now the Indie Author Book Club. And I've got all these really cool people around me. And that for me is like so fulfilling that I don't really care if I, become super rich off of it.
Right.
I mean, that'd be really nice, but
yeah. But you said you wanted to become a full-time author, right?
yeah, I would love
That'd be
to.
like a nice dream, right? Yeah.
That would be an amazing dream, just to be able to, I mean, for me, like I get up in the morning, usually around like between 5 and 6, I go to the gym. I try and get in a little bit of writing, and then I work all day, and I come home and I write some more, and then I go to bed, and it repeats. And then on the weekends, I like get in trouble because I lock myself in my office and try and crack out a ton of writing.
Right.
But I mean, not having a full-time job would be amazing, because then you'd be able to just really like knuckle down and write some of that stuff. But at the same time, I don't know that I would be able to stay motivated for the whole day.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, that's actually kind of the motivating thing is like, I only have such a small fragment of my time that I can use for writing, that I'm like, I've got an hour, I'm going to crank out a chapter, and I'm going to go ahead and, go over it 2 or 3 times, get it polished, and then I'll set it aside. And my first thing tomorrow, I'll edit it one more time, and then I post it. Like, I don't have time to sit over and stress over it. And like, if I had all the time in the world, I'd probably be less productive, which is just the weird irony of being human, I think, is that the more time you give us, the more our ability to stretch tasks is.
Well, Bob, you're retired, so you tell us, what's it like to have all the time in the world to write when you actually don't ever have any time to write when you're retired, because you have 10 million other things to do?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too. All of a sudden you're available to everybody because everyone knows like, oh, you're not working, so why don't you come over here and help us out,
Well, you need to stop saying you're retired and start saying you're a full-time author.
But there's a couple things. So there's one side of the coin is, yes, like say tomorrow, I don't have anything. I purposely keep one day clean and clear of anything. No appointments, no meetings. No, I don't talk to anybody. That's like my day off, as it were, even though I have 7 days off. But so part of me wants to, and I was just doing this. I was like outside pulling weeds today, like freaking, this is the last thing I want to do. But like, I would love for me, if I had, like, we're talking about money, like if I was making decent money or working for like you get picked up like a big publisher, and like now it's changed because like you don't work for yourself, you're working for them. And I would love to just, like you said, right? Like, I don't care about the yard. Let me know if the house is on fire. You know what I mean? Tell me when dinner's ready. All that stuff. But like my wife was saying, well, that's not a balance of life. Like, you need to go and do stuff around the house. You need to go and make dinner.
I though?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, come on, I don't wanna. But so there's that. Okay, so now Austin just mentioned it. Like, I do have tomorrow. I have all day to finish. And by the way, I'm on the epilogue. So I'm gonna have 4 pages left to revise here with my beta readers, and then I'm gonna have to reread the entire book to make sure it's all ready to go to the next step. So I'm happy about that. However, okay, I can really only write for maybe 2.5 to 3 hours, maybe, and then my brain just doesn't want to work anymore. Really, even editing or revising, whatever it is, looking at the words on a page and thinking, it's a lot of fun, but it takes a lot of energy. And while I'm doing that, I'm having a great time. Listen to music, watching the videos, whatever. I'm in the world. And then, like I said, when that time rolls around, my brain is just like, yeah, we're done. Like, we're done thinking. Like, I can't think anymore. So say you guys, you eventually you'll be retired, I hope. And you will. You're going to sit there like you have all day to write. You're not going to.
No.
It's just honestly not possible. Nobody is going to sit there and write 8 to 10 hours. It's just not going to happen. And like Austin, what we talked about, it might have been last week or at some point, us to mention, because we're on Discord together, and he's like, "Yeah, well, getting the book done, but you're always playing World of Warcraft." Like, yeah, you're right. There's just other stuff to do. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
what I
so
mean?
true.
And that's not a bad thing. So like there was a summer where like I didn't have to work and I was like, okay, well I'm gonna act like I'm a full-time author. And so I was like, but that really equated to me working from 8 o'clock in the morning until noon. I would write for 3 hours and then edit for an hour. And like that's 3,000 words like that I was getting done.
That's
And
plenty.
at that pace, you're finishing a book
Yeah.
every 3 months. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's what Brandon Sanderson does. Yeah, he's doing 2,000 words a day, no matter what, and that's why he can
Mhm.
write 4 or 5 books, every 2 years or something.
right.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I'm at the point in my writing career where I can just sit down and force myself to churn out words. I've noticed it. Like I know that everyone says, if you have writer's block or whatever, you have to just sit down at your desk and just write, just make it happen. And that doesn't work for me, which I think is totally fine, right?
Okay.
That doesn't work for me. And so like trying to be like, I have to write this many words every single day, that doesn't motivate me at all. Having that goal definitely motivates me. And I liked what we did when we were doing our little November projects together. I was kind of setting myself like a weekly goal so I could, do less here, do more there kind of thing. But yeah, I could not like if I hit that point where nothing that I'm writing is even making sense anymore, it's just easier for me to just step away and then come back to it later.
Yep.
Not necessarily when I feel like writing later, but if I sit here and I just try and crush it and nothing
Right.
happens,
Right.
that I'm gonna be more likely to not want to come back to write later
Yep.
because it's just such a negative experience.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's something for me too, is that like the actual original writing portion is so much more intensive for me than editing, which is why I always like to end on like editing something. So whether it's the chapter I just was working on or going back to a different story entirely, because it's like going for a run and then ending with the cool down walk. It's like, okay, well, like I don't have to actually do anything creative here, but it lets me enjoy the entire process more because it's the less painful portion of it. And it tricks my brain into thinking, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was
Sorry about my police dog next door. Go ahead.
I'm actually surprised you never hear mine. Mine are horrible for that. But yeah, so something I don't know if you saw my message on, I think you had posted something on Instagram, Bob, on the Writer's Realm podcast Instagram page, and it was a list of like what motivates you to write. And one of the things that I commented and I said, what the heck did I say now? It was something like, so for me, I think of my characters as friends. And it's because I write, and what motivates me to write is spending time with these characters that I've
Aw.
created.
Oh, fun.
And I'm not really sure what that says about my other friends who probably now feel like, just like our listeners, as I called them the other day, absolute losers.
Oh my God.
you didn't use the word absolute before. I
No,
guess we're
wow.
escalating.
It's progressing. But I love these characters so much, right? Like you make these characters, some of them I hate, but some of them I really, really like. And so
Yeah.
for me, that's what motivates me to write. So when I was writing Heartbound and as I was going through and editing, I was kind of excited to do it because I'm spending time with these people that I just really care about. And then now I've kind of transitioned to writing my next book, and I'm getting more and more excited to write that one. And I constantly want to write it because I just want to explore this world with these really cool characters that I've created.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's really motivating because that's what we want in life is most of us really want to spend time with people that we care about. So, and I actually, to back this up, there's a scientific reason, which right now the name of it is escaping me, but there's an actual thing that says like but you're basically dreaming while you're awake. And like your brain can't tell the difference between you killing off a character and somebody actually in your life dying because you actually form these probably very strange to non-writers attachments to these characters. And so it's really cool because then like, you're happy for them when they're happy and you're sad for them when they're sad. And it's like there's an actual scientific reason for it. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it makes me feel less weird about crying over writing scenes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I liked how I'm talking about it was a comic book artist, and somebody asked him which one of your covers is your favorite. I think it was Adam Hughes actually. So forgive me. I know he'll never hear this if it wasn't him, but I think somebody asked him what's your favorite cover because that's all he does right now is covers, and he said my next one. And I feel like even though I love what I'm doing, I can't wait to get done with this particular series. This is book 4. I'm going to finish up. Book 5 is coming up, but I can't wait to be done because I want to start writing an epic fantasy. I want to start writing a cozy
Barbarian
mystery.
Barista?
Barbarian Barista. Urban fantasy. Yeah, there's all these other stories I can't wait to get into and explore. And I guess what we're talking about, Holly, right? Like your characters that aren't, they're kind of half created, but I want to get to know them even more, right? It's like when you meet somebody in person, you sit down and there's just something like, wow, this guy's really interesting, or like she's fascinating. I mean, I want to spend some more time with this person and get to know them a little bit more. So I feel like that's very, very true what you just said.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like I never really thought about it, and I never really understood before I started writing. Like I would read these books, and I have one series that I just absolutely love. I've read the series probably like a dozen times, and I still think about the characters sometimes, which is ridiculous to people who don't read. They're like, they're not real. What's wrong with you, right? And I still think about them as if they're just, out there somewhere in this world with me. But it's because it's cozy for me. Like I enjoy the world that they're in, and I enjoy the characters themselves. And it's just like you're right. You just want to spend time with them.
Yeah, and like not to get super weird about it, but like reading about actual people that existed in history versus completely made up people, it's really not all that different. And so when you think about it, like they are as real and as tangible in a lot of ways as anything else that we ever know about in existence if we don't experience it ourselves.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How about fame? Anybody here want to write and be famous?
God, please no.
No,
not for Austin. Not for Holly.
I know it might surprise you, but I have zero desire to be famous.
No, I'm just surprised at the answer. Not that I want to be famous. I would, but it'd be nice if somebody said, "Hey, aren't you so-and-so? You wrote the Coin of Fame series. I love that kind of thing."
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Like
I would like that. Like just that acknowledgement, or like someone being like, "Oh, I bought your book," or like, "Oh, will you sign this for me?" Like that to me would just be like, that's amazing. But I don't want to be like going out for dinner with my family and just getting like bombarded with people.
JK. Stephen King, right? Everyone's going to recognize them.
Exactly. And because of my job, I do have the opportunity, and in my life, I have the opportunity to spend some time with some very well-known people. And that's the exact same feedback that I get. And it gets to the point where when we have like quiet time with just like close friends, you can see like the decompression going on, because it's just all the time you have to be careful of like what you're doing and what you're saying. And, God forbid, especially now with, phones and cameras everywhere, it's like you can never just fully unwind or go out with your friends or anything like that. And that to me would just be like horrible.
Yeah.
Although the only exciting thing I do is like sit in a coffee shop and, read my books.
Right.
Yeah. Like niche fame would be kind of cool, but like even to that, like I was seriously considering using like a pen name and all of that, and already had one picked out. And like just randomly decided, no, I'm not going to do that. But honestly, like I've thought about doing some nonfiction work, and I'm like, if I do my nonfiction, I'm 98% sure I'm going to use a pen name for that. So,
I'm curious. I'm curious as to why. The topic, of course.
The topics. So a lot of it, it's kind of all over the place. So like one has to do with, changes in society. So like one is the squeaky wheel gets replaced. So the principle that it's easier to replace people than to fix people. Or things like the downfall of the church and like how the church has fallen and the common things that are kind of overlooked and like not really discussed. So a lot of like super controversial topics that like
Right.
even if I'm not famous are going to be ongoing discussions in my life that I don't necessarily want to have with random people in my daily life.
You're right.
So those are
we're gonna get to Holly real quick. Let me make a quick comment about that. No, I know exactly what you mean because I came up with a best-selling idea for a nonfiction book, which was something about how the church is more in love with guns more in love with the Second Amendment than it is with God. Because like I feel like this country is not. Oh, the country that we're in is the U.S. So the United States and guns are like peanut butter and jelly pretty much right now. But anyway, I know exactly what you're talking about, Austin. Holly, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I didn't have.
Oh, I thought you had something. Because I interrupted you a while back, but
it's gone now.
It's gone.
It's gone.
But so like I don't like I really enjoy writing about heavy topics, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. So like, I mean, one of my fictional stories is about like what if God was all powerful but not all knowing, and like follows that God as the main character. And like one chapter is about oops, he blipped existence out of existence. And then like recreates everything and hopes I didn't know what everything was like. So hopefully it's all better. So
that's funny.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting how there's some authors that can make that jump from one to the other or from like one genre to another. And some of them will do that. They'll just get a pen name and they, just write on it. But to me, I'm like, what happens if you become a famous author under like
the pen name,
under the pen name instead of as your own name, and
just ask Richard Bachman about that because I think we all figure it out.
Or E.L. James, right? She wrote 50 Shades of Grey. I don't think that was her real name, but I could be wrong.
I just feel like for me, I mean, it's a personal thing, right? Because I don't care about, fame and fortune from my novels. I just care about writing them and them being good and people around me enjoying them. But it would be weird, I feel like, if I wrote a book and then had to be like, hey, did you guys see that book over there by this other person that's not me? Like, it would, like it would just be. And I feel like, then too, like you put yourself in a position where you're probably going to get not the best reviews from certain people. Whereas if they knew that you wrote it, even if it wasn't their style, they might compliment sandwich it a little bit.
Right.
But
I get it.
Well, as I am already known on the podcast as the contrarian, whenever I go into write nonfiction, I don't necessarily, like, I don't know. It's a lot.
All right. So fame is out, money. What else would there be motivate you as a writer? As my cat meows from the other side of the door.
Like, I think we've talked about it before where like I will be taking in another story and I will get so excited about where the story is going, or at least my assumption about where the story is going, and then it doesn't go there and I'm just so angry at them for not doing this really cool thing I had in my head. And so I like end up putting it in a note somewhere and I'm like, this has to go somewhere because it's such a good idea that it needs to belong. So I think there's a lot of frustration that goes into it.
Yeah. How about when you read a book? This has happened to me in drawing, painting, and writing. You read a book and you're like, this guy got published? You got to be kidding me. I know I can write a better book than this.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Big time, right?
Absolutely. That was one of the things that actually, when I first started writing, that was something that had motivated me to write, was that I remember I had read a book by this incredibly famous author who's actually written some really, really good stuff that I love. And I just read this one book and I was like, I see. And I kind of did, like, one of my girlfriends and I, we read a lot together. And we will always just sit down and discuss these books like at great length. And we were talking about this book and I was just like, all of these things just don't make any sense to me. Like, why wouldn't you do it this way? Or why would you not have this happen? Or why would you not explain this? And, this character doesn't make sense because of this reason. And the more I started thinking about it, I was kind of like, I think that I would be able to write a book exactly the way that I want to read it. And so that for me is like creating something that I want. And we all want what we want, and we want it now. So that was really what motivated me, was like the thought of having this really cool book and following this storyline exactly the way that I imagined it. And that was really motivating for me. Unfortunately, not super motivating, because I then pushed that book aside to finish our November project. Thanks, guys.
Right.
But again, that's what I'm going through right now. Is I know that I am in the very, very last stages. Heartbound's getting published this year, and it's like, it's kind of almost wrapped up and pushed off to the side. And my brain is already switching over. Like you said, Bob, it's switching over to the new book that you're working on. And so now I'm once again, like, just super excited. But then of course I hear stupid songs that remind me of a spin-off that I'm planning on writing for this book. And then of course today I hear the song and I'm like, man, I want to go start working on the spin-off. And I'm like, no, you need to write the first 2 books in this trilogy before you get there. So just relax. But yeah, it's it's like a downward spiral of motivation, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I know I went through, bookstores looking for, back in the day when there were Christian bookstores. And I think I shared this, like all they had on the bookshelves was Prairie Romance, or I can't remember the name of this author, this Christian horror author. And that's it. There's nothing in between. And I'm like, okay, this is pissing me off. Like I want a book like this. And now here I am 4 books later. But I mean, and for the listeners, like, there's nothing to do with God in any of these, but they just wanted, like, I was just in that bookstore all the time, or bookstore, looking for, tons of nonfiction, obviously, but so I'm not saying like there's a bunch of like, Christianese or God language. There actually isn't. There's nothing in here, but anyway, it just motivated me to get cracking on something I wanted to read.
Yeah, well, and I think that's something too, is that, like, as another Christian author, like, a lot of the works I did read that were Christian works were like, hey, this is the whole point. Let me hammer this in your face. And I'm like, I just want to explore those really complicated things that nobody else really wants to talk about. Like, what if God is all powerful but not all good? Like, how do we handle that? Like, do you still obey him? Like, those kind of like weird, awkward stories. And philosophy. So that's where like this interesting fantasy world can come in.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting as well. Since I've started the Indie Author Book Club, I'm now reading books that I wouldn't normally have read like previously, like completely out of the genre. You know me, I love my fantasy books. I go pretty hard with them. And so this is like a great way for me to be able to explore these other things. And I feel like even though I've just started getting into it, because these are all books by indie authors, and I know that they're books by indie authors, every single time I pick one of these books up, I get so excited to just get back to writing. And I get so excited because I know that these people have gone through the exact same thing that I'm going through right now. And it's really cool because when I make fun posts about it, like, I constantly now have people being like, oh my gosh, I'm so, like, I can't believe that you're out there reading my book right now. There's someone in the world who bought my book and they're reading it. And that's, they get so excited. And I love that. Like, that's just, it makes me feel good that they feel good. And then that in turn, just like, I'm like, that's the kind of, like, we need people like this in the community, and we need to be supporting each other. And it just makes me more motivated and way more excited to get back and write.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think too, like, you're talking about like expanding out of your normal like genre or whatever, but like every genre is going to touch on each other at different points within a story. And so like, if you go through and maybe, mystery is not your normal thing or horror is not your normal thing, well, going and reading those things is still going to help you write scenes and chapters in your epic fantasy. And so I think there's a lot to be said about reading outside of your genre, or specifically going to like, hey, I know I suck at writing the romantic part of my story and I never do any sort of relationships. I should probably go and read some romance novels.
That's actually really true. I picked up a book from Target ages ago. It's still sitting on my bookshelf. I haven't even opened it yet. I picked it up because it had said something on the back about how there was a lot of fight scenes and like sword fighting and stuff in it. And that for me, I was actually just saying this to Jeff today, who we've had on our podcast a while ago, that um, I have a terrible time writing fight scenes. And so for me, it was like, I need to be reading more books with more fight scenes so that I can understand how I'm supposed to be writing them.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's real. You're totally right. You're learning all kinds of different things from different books.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Are there any authors you guys loved and you're like, I want to follow in their footsteps?
As far as like their writing
I don't
or just
know. Kind of,
or
I
their
guess.
journey or
But or maybe you were just like, God, this is such a great book.
like they
I feel
click with
like I
you.
have that. Yeah, I have this in me too. I have this. I feel like I have a great story in me, and I want to get this
Mhm.
into a book. You know.
I will say that
Yep.
there was only like the one story I've ever read where I was like, this person is doing all the things that I enjoy in such a beautiful way that I'm like, oh snap, I'm never going to do any one of these things as good as them,
Yeah.
but I'm loving this book so much,
Right.
is Patrick Rothfuss.
Oh.
And
Mm.
it frustrates me to know that I may never get to
The Name of
finish
the
this
Wind.
series. Yes, The Name of the Wind is such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. And
Mhm.
like it nails so many of the themes that I go for in my books and the
Nice.
characterizations that I go
Right.
for, where I'm like, man, it's like this irreverence and this fun, but like it's like covering up all of these darker hidden truths and like all these complications, but like
Mhm.
giving you some of the truths as you go along, and like but like unreliable narrators and all of this stuff. Like every piece of it is just so perfectly what I love in a story, both as a reader and a writer, that I was just like, this is, if not top book of my life, top 3 for sure.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
What'd you have, Holly? Who you like?
Yeah, so mine's actually really funny. It's actually so this author, she's quite famous now. But her first series was a young adult series, and I actually read it as an adult. And it was recommended to actually a friend. It was my friend's, my really good friend. It was one of her favorite books, and she bought it for me for my birthday. And I read like the first like 4 chapters, and I was like, this is horrible. And I pushed it, I put it off to the side. And I completely lied to my friend and told her that I read it and I liked it. Just
Wow.
completely, just bald-faced lied. And so I went back like a few months later. I had nothing to do. I think it was like I brought it with me somewhere and I had absolutely nothing to do. I didn't have any internet, couldn't do social stuff, like nothing. But I had this book. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna give it another go. And I read it to the end. And there's more books in this series. So I'm like, all right, at this point I'm committed. I got to find out what happens. And I made it like the end of the first book was good, but because it was the first book she had ever written and she wrote it when she was so young that it just didn't really click with me. Like I couldn't resonate, not necessarily that I couldn't resonate with the characters, but the writing style for me, like there's a lot of exclamation points and it just felt like
Mm.
everything was just really forced upon me.
Mm.
But the second book was a lot better. And by the third book, I was like, I am so in love with this series that I just don't even know what to do with myself anymore.
Nice.
And then from there, her writing style, like as she continued this series, you could see her writing style change. And I know this is a bit long-winded, but I actually would love to be able to write like her because she has just taken like a lot of people go to school and like get writing degrees, and Austin, you're an English teacher, right? So you understand this, but they're like, this is the way that things should be written. This is what proper sentences look like. This is what, proper paragraphs look like. And she just completely throws all of those rules out the window. And it's like, she says, like the characters say things and things happen in the book, and she just writes them as they would happen in real life, not the way
Mhm.
that's like English structure tells us it should be written.
Mhm.
And it works for her because in her books, you hear that internal monologue from the character. And so it wouldn't be structured like a
Mhm.
normal, like an essay or something like that, because that's not how people exist in real life. And she was like one of the first authors I've seen actually do that and do it really well. And so
Mhm.
that's something that I always strive to do in my writing,
Mm.
is just to, maybe push the edges of what society tells us our English
Yeah.
structure should look like. Because
That's right.
again, books are lives. And so,
Well, they're
It's-
art
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
We're
Mhm.
artists.
mhm,
Yeah.
And
And
it's
I think
it's
pushing that
phenomenal.
stuff is important. So,
mhm.
which
For
I mean,
me,
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say for me it was The Great Train Robbery by Michael Crichton.
Mm.
I
Oh.
read that and I was so like, this is exactly how I want to write. I mean, and
Mhm.
I read it at the perfect time too, when I was kind of learning how to write. All I was doing is like listening to podcasts all the time on how to write, and I read that and I'm like, oh my god, this is it. I mean, I'm not going to be Michael Crichton at all, but just the style, and that was his first book too that he wrote. Um, Pretty sure that was his first book, but yeah, the pacing, the plot, the story, I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to write. If I can write like this, I will be happy. Right. So
Mm.
that's definitely key. I don't know. I can't think of anything else. How about another? You guys have anything else? What motivates you as a writer?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Being on an amazing podcast in the future, maybe.
Yes.
Right?
Being on this amazing podcast does really motivate me to write.
With amazing listeners, Holly. With amazing
incredible, absolutely
Yes.
incredible listeners on the Writers Realm podcast. I love
Wow.
all of you.
Wow.
Shout out for putting up with me for all this time, for all these episodes.
All these episodes.
I apparently
So-
don't deserve it.
No, it's not true. Stop it.
So I don't know if I've ever talked about why I started writing, actually.
Hmm.
As far as initial motivation, I actually started by accident, kind of.
Oh.
So like I got a writing assignment in college that was to write a 2-page short story. So I wrote a fan fiction of a video game I played for 2 pages. And I was like, here's my short story. Didn't want to think about it. Literally hit the page minimum and was like, ended it with the dude knocking on a door and was like, boom, done. I hit it. I don't want to write an extra word because I hated it. Failed English all throughout high school. And then we had to get up and read our works. And the teacher just looked at me. He's like, you're not going to end it there, are you? It's like, well, I don't know. But like the way he asked it made me think he was actually intrigued by what was going to happen next, as opposed to like, well, that was a weird way to end. It was like this actual buy-in. I was like, oh, somebody actually cares about what happens to these characters.
Nice.
And so I was like, well, I guess I'll keep going. And I've been writing in the same spin-off universe of a
Nice.
video game ever since.
Yeah.
And like it's so malformed from what it was originally that like it would be almost impossible for even the people that
Mhm.
knew about the specific connection to see it.
Right.
But like there's still elements of that like I hold dear because it's like it's connected to all of that. And like I don't know, there's just something about seeing people react to things and be like, you know, we talked about how much we care about these characters, but seeing
Mhm.
other people treat them as real people
Yeah.
and be interested in what's happening, as if like whenever I write this character dying, like if he
Mhm.
cared about what was going to be on the other side of that door, just imagine how horrible he's going to feel when he finds out what happens to that character in 150 pages.
Yeah.
So
You kind of bring up a good point. Maybe there's some of us that want to write because we read a book, it impacted us so deeply, and now you're like, I want to do the same thing. I want to impact somebody else's life through my
Mhm.
writing. Like bring them, like we just had that guest a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. I'm horrible with names, by the way. So it's not like when Austin leaves, I have no idea what his name is. He's just
yeah, if I didn't have it right
No.
on my little square.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's just a guy with a beard. But yeah, he talked about that. Like he just had kind of he wanted to impact people that that were low at a
Mhm.
low point in their life. You know what I mean? Does that ever hit one of you guys? Like that's what you want to do? You want to kind of impact somebody else emotionally and bring them up or something? Or lift them up, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I ever felt that reading a book was reading Dostoevsky and just like realizing the power of the written word of like
Yeah.
I was laughing out loud at a book, which was the
Mm.
first time I'd ever done that. I was crying reading a book. And I'm like,
Mm.
not only was I doing those things, it was written by some wealthy dude 150 years ago or whatever in Russia about, random people in rural Russia. I'm like, there
Yeah.
could not be
Yeah.
a story more disconnected from my life,
Mm.
but I felt like I knew those characters and belonged with those characters and could
Yeah.
understand the pain and suffering and the trials that they were
Wow.
going through. And so whenever they had emotional beats in their story, like I felt that,
Yeah.
and like that's just such, a testament to what we can do with the written word.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
true. It's a good
I
point.
agree. Yeah, I think it just feels good, and just thinking about, again, like I write a story that it like makes me feel good.
Mm.
And it's something,
Mm.
it takes me on the adventure that I want to go to, or it lets me in my mind, right? You come up with these ideas and you write this whole book and all these people, and it's you're fantasizing that as if you are that character, right? Or you're living in this world.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of somebody else being able to escape from their world
Mhm.
and just diving in to a whole different one. And that's the best thing about books, is like every book that you pick up is going to be a little bit different, right? So it's like
Mhm.
every time you're just it's just a new world for you to explore. And it's that to me is really cool. Like just a thought of someone having like a really crappy day. And I was talking about this with my coworker the other day. She was like, I don't want to go out and people, or I don't want to, if my roommate has a bunch of people coming over and I just really want to go back home and just like dive under the covers of my book
Mhm.
and just absorb into that world
Mm.
and just escape this one for a bit. And I love
Mm.
that. Like
Yeah.
it's nice for people to have somewhere to go.
Yeah. I like that. It's nice for
Mhm.
for us to create someplace. And we
Mhm.
can't, and hopefully we want to make with these worlds and characters like, I can't wait to get back to them. Like kind of like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
We love
Mhm.
that place so much. Like we want to go back. That's neat.
Yeah.
Well-
And it's nice that community that you like, it's
Mhm.
even with like artists and stuff like that now. And I know like AI art is very controversial, but a lot of people use the AI art and they create social media memes and they, make all these things about these characters in these books, and people love it because it gives them an opportunity to express themselves and become involved with the book, even though
Mhm.
it's not their book. Now they're creating art and they're having discussions about, imagine if that character did this, or if that character dated that character, or what about
Mhm.
this backstory? And so all these people get involved. And I think that's just, to me, it's really cool because,
Mhm.
a lot of people are, don't have a lot of people outside of those communities.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
it's really cool.
That's neat.
Yeah, sorry, I laughed during that because so we talked earlier about how I finished my master's degree. So I had two last classes that were capstones. One of them was about ethics, and we had to do a presentation. So I did mine on AI art.
Of course you did.
And I have
That's good,
gone
though.
so far over the last year that I did an entire 30-minute presentation defending AI art
Wow.
and the ethics behind it.
Oh,
So
well,
Yeah.
we're looking for
now
a
I did
replacement
present that
class.
there are use cases for it and not so savory use cases for it.
It's tough, man. I know an author who one of her books got ripped apart because people realized that she had used, like, for one of her international
Mhm.
copies, the cover was changed and they had used like the Adobe like Shutter whatever, like, and then just changed it a little bit
Yeah.
with AI. And but I'm like, I also know that on the original book she spent like $2,400 getting it designed by hand
Yeah.
by an actual artist. So, in
Yeah.
those cases, I'm like, I mean, she's not trying to fork out,
Right.
$50,000 a year because however many different countries publish her book
Yeah.
and she needs a different cover.
Right.
But
Yeah, and that's one of those things that like I talked about, like, 'cause I've got a background in art, and so the thing is like just be honest about it. Like that's what really pisses people off, like more than almost anything, is that like you try and pass it off as if you're not doing it, and then like that just escalates the whole
Right.
thing.
yeah,
Like you go to a gallery nowadays, and it'll say, "Hey, we used Photoshop." Just say, "Hey, I used AI generation." And then people will be like, okay, like, I understand you did this. You're not
Yeah.
passing it off as anything else. Like, okay.
Yeah.
and I will still be the one that will stand here and swear to you all day. It's freaking hard to create AI art. I don't care what anybody says. It is nowhere near as easy as you think to do
And,
these things.
And you know what? If you want to support a indie author having the money in order to actually have a well-paid cover
Mhm.
artist, then support their Kickstarter. I'm just going to
Yeah.
throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I mean, real cover artists, they're not cheap, man. And you don't want to.
Mm-mm.
You don't want to pick somebody up for like $100 and like, oh yeah, this is going to be brilliant. I'm sorry to say, like,
Because they're either not going to put the work in,
no.
or
Right.
they're going to
No.
put the work in, which means that you've really shortchanged them, and that's
Yeah.
just as bad. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
like I found one guy a couple years ago that I wanted to do a cover for this, and he was 1,000. And I'm like, it'll be worth it but I mean, it's $1,000, but I mean, he does
Mhm.
amazing work.
Yeah.
And then I just got in touch with him again because I wanted to do a new cover for my Kickstarter, and now his price is $2,000. I was like, okay, once again, I guess
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this. It's like, it's a lot of money, man.
It sure
I can't
is.
do that.
Oof.
All
not
right.
for that entire tangent to take over, but
Yeah, that was good. This is what we're all. We should be calling it the Writer's Realm Tangent Podcast with my police dog outside.
I like it. He's agreeing.
Yeah.
And if anybody disagrees with me, they can come at me in the comments.
Yeah. Attack Austin, please. All right. So time for our don'ts. Don't do this.
Yes, our
portion.
don't session.
As far as what motivates you as a writer, I'm going to go first, and
Ooh.
feel free to kick it back if you don't like this. Okay. I'm going to say if money is your main motivator, I'm going to say don't do that, because
There are easier ways.
very few of us writers make enough to make a living. As a matter of fact, I have a good friend who we'll have on here sometime. She writes historic romance, best-selling author, award-winning best-selling author. Okay, those are the two titles you want on your name while you're, on your resume. She told me she's like best-selling. Well, now it could vary. I mean, it could be best-selling, Peter Straub or Stephen King or something. But anyway, she's like, yeah, best-selling means I make almost minimum wage a month.
Mhm.
That's what she makes. I'm like, holy mackerel.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's very, very true, because there's so many of us that, hey, that'd be great if we could get to a place like if I made $1,000 or $2,000 a month, I swear I would be so happy with that. But if you're like, yeah, I'm gonna just write, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna start writing books, like, please don't quit your day job.
Mhm.
If you're doing this for money, it's not going to happen.
Well, and to your point, like to be a best-selling author, like you just have to hit it. It's not like you had to hit it every month. You hit it once for 1 week. The week your book comes out, you hit the New York Times best-selling list.
Yeah.
And some weeks that's like 3,000 copies. Like
Yeah.
it just depends on the week. And like that's one thing that publishers are really good about is timing those books to come out
Yeah.
to get you snuck in there when it's the
Mhm.
easiest.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that's true. You'll make money, big
Yep.
money right off the bat, and then guess what? It's time for Austin, and then it's time for Holly. So like it's always going to be playing catch up,
Mhm.
Yep.
So that's mine. You do.
What to not do?
I
You
had
guys-
one. I had
you
one in my
guys
head,
always-
and then I got totally distracted by what you said. Okay. I will say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to create the world that you're creating just for you.
Mm.
So if you don't if you're writing a book, you should be like doing it to escape. If you're doing it the way that I do it, which is to escape the world that I live in. Not that it's a bad one, but it doesn't have dragons and fairies. So here we go.
Okay.
So I'm using this book or these books to escape the world that I'm in, and I'm writing the story that I want to write. But I know some people I've talked to, they're like, I want to write about this, but I don't think that people will like that.
Mm.
Or people will have problems with it, or, whatever. And I'm like, who cares? Who cares if they don't like it? Because if you're writing for you and for to make yourself feel good and to have somewhere for you to escape, then don't be afraid to write the book that you want. If there's other people out there who like it and enjoy it, then that's great. And if you never want to share it with other people, if you literally just want to go through all that work and all the editing and the formatting and then get it ready and have it printed so you can just put it on your shelf, that's totally fine too. But write the book that you want to write for you, if that's what your escape is. And don't don't give a crap about what anybody else says if they're going to like it or not.
That's
Perfect.
good. Yeah. Goodness, what not to do with motivation? You know what? I am going to disagree. My don't is going to be in contrast to something that Holly said earlier in the
Uh-oh.
podcast about looking at a blank page and being like, it's okay to not write. It's not okay.
You would.
Exactly. It's my
You
job.
would.
I throw the chair into the ring, and that's my job in this wrestling federation. Is
The Writers Wrestling Federation.
yeah,
podcast.
exactly. Because you know what? You're right. It's going to be really, really shitty, whatever you write in that moment. And
Mhm.
that is okay. Like, just sit down and write it. Like, maybe don't try and be like, this is going to be my next chapter in the really important book that I'm writing. But write something. Like, it's fine. Like, I know whenever I first started writing, it took me an hour and a half to get into the groove to get anything good out.
Mhm.
Well, the only reason,
sure.
the only way that you can get that time down is to sit down and write those crappy words in order to get that down.
Mhm.
And so just get your warm-up phase, sit down and write the same different character introduction or whatever, like write a first chapter of a book you'll never finish, introducing a character, describing them, finding different ways to introduce them. Do the cliche like, oh, they look in the mirror and they describe themselves. So you get it out of your system and you realize, hey, this worked better than that. This didn't work. Let me try that. And like you get so many bad words out of you that you've got only good ones left. So like let that be your motivation. Like it doesn't matter how terrible your words are. Good ones come eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
It's
that.
very true. And I will say at the very least, you might get some really funny like social media reels or something out of it too. You know, like if that's something, if you're working on, if you know that you're writing a book and you're going to be marketing one day, which is something that we all unfortunately have to go through. You know, those like fun little things, like just little, if you like are exhausted, like I did one recently, I was exhausted and I went back and reread the next day what I wrote, and I was just like, this doesn't even make sense. Like, what was I even like, just the whole, and it was funny to me. I was just like immediately like, this is a hilarious reel because it just shows you that writing is real, and sometimes you just gotta step away and go to bed.
Yeah.
But if I had, then you know, you're right, I never would have had that reel, and people loved it. So
But like that's the thing
yeah.
too, is like if I go back and like I think that's motivating. If I go back and look at stuff I wrote like 6 years ago, I'm like, God, this is so dreadful. And like that's motivating. Like I can sit down and start writing immediately, and what I am writing first draft right now is better than third draft 6 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's, I will say too, like I tell people all the time that I know are writing, I'm like, don't edit your actual draft on your computer. Like if you're going from your first to your second draft, make a copy of it and then edit the copy. Because if you're constantly editing the same draft, you never have the ability to see those changes. Like you can't look back when it's published and in your hand and look back at that first copy
That's
because
smart.
it doesn't
I like
exist
that.
anymore. And so then you're like, oh, I never improved, but you've improved in bounds, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Keep those cringy copies. Don't
Yes.
burn that. All
Yeah.
right.
What I used to do is write by hand, but that's miserable.
Oh,
No thanks.
So,
I like my hands the way they are. I'll have like all
I already
like-
have like weird disjointed. Look at, you see my pinky finger there? You can't really see it now.
Yeah.
It's like-
bent
Oh, yeah, yeah.
at the
It's
top.
it's
What'd you
all
do?
like, and like even right here, there's like this huge kind of weird lump,
Hmm.
and it's like,
That's
let's
writer's
see.
pinky right there.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I could not handwrite.
oh yeah. Well, what's even worse is
I mean,
I
I
wrote it
can,
in
but-
pencil. So like the amount of like
Oh,
flipping through
Austin.
it,
What is your problem? Okay,
I
we're
don't want
done.
to cross things out. But then again, I never like erase and rewrite anything. So, but I also don't. I only write on the right page whenever I'm writing, so it's not like it's rubbing against each other. So
What the heck? What
Oh,
does that
funny.
mean? You're right on the right page.
instead
right
of like
half, the
left
right half?
and
Mhm.
right, like I only
Yeah.
write on this page.
Oh,
That
I
way,
see.
like they're not
Got it, got it.
sandwiched.
Okay, okay, I got it. Perfect.
But I don't know if I'm the only person that does that. But like it just bothers me when they butt up against each other.
it is
So.
the only person in the world, Austin Matthews. All right, we are done. We've talked your ear off. Thank you for listening, folks. So please subscribe. We have tons of listeners. I would love for you to click the
Yes.
especially Holly, would love for you to
We
click
would
the
love.
subscribe buttons. Please, thank you.
Yeah,
we have,
special
Hashtag write and
favor to Holly.
describe.
hashtag write and describe. Yeah. So please subscribe to our channels if you like us. If you don't like us, we still love you. So don't forget to subscribe to our channels at the links below so you don't miss any of our Writers Realm content. We always love to hear from our listeners, so please send us questions, send complaints to Austin,
Boom.
topics.
And get
you
in the
want us to-
Discord.
Get into the Discord that
Yes,
we have.
get in our Discord.
All of our links are there for you, please. But we'd love to get in touch with you. All right. So until then, have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Send your hate mail to Holly.
Don't send me your hate mail. Actually do.